With the release of Beru and Kaisel, we also got some new shadow ranks for all of the shadows. So today I'll be updating my tier list of all of the best shadows in solo leveling Arise. And this is the tier list that I did previously, where we have the S going all the way down to the C tier. However, before I do rank the likes of Beru and also Kaisel, I do want to make some slight changes to the tier list. Because as you can see, poor Tank is down in the C tier because at the time, up until recently, Tank didn't really have any usages whatsoever. Because things like his Shadow Authority buffing defense and also his only really main purpose with his skills being to be able to stun your enemies wasn't really that useful, or at least in my opinion it wasn't. However, thanks to the release of Thomas Andre, I do think he has become quite a lot better, because when you use Tank alongside Thomas, not only are you going to be able to benefit his damage, but you're also going to be able to benefit your Thomas's and also your Gogan He's shield effectiveness, which will overall make Tank quite a lot better now, and so he can actually have a team for him to be ran in. So overall, to be honest, I think I'll put him up to the B tier, because unfortunately he's not become like a lot better, because there are definitely still a lot better options for your Thomas team, and also just a lot of other teams that have defense scaling DPSs. So yeah, I do think he has become a little bit better, but nothing too crazy at least. Which then of course does actually bring me on to the two later shadows to be added to the game, which are of course going to be Kaisel and also Beru. And let's start off with Kaisel, who is a very, very good supportive shadow for the Mono Dark team, because of his Shadow Authority buff buffing all of your team members' ultimate skill damage by up to 9%, which is really good for DPSs like Charhain, Silvermane Baekuno, and also Charlotte. And this ultimate damage buff is going to perfectly pair up with Isla, because Isla is a really, really good supporter for your ultimate damage, because of her A1 allowing you to charge the power gauge of the second character on your team by 60% and also decrease that ultimate skill cooldown by 20 seconds, which does benefit Silvermane Baekuno a ton and can make him a much, much better DPS, because his ultimate can do a huge amount of damage, because his damage does increase by 10% for every 10% of his HP lost. So yeah, this is going to do a lot more damage now, which overall does make Kaisel very, very good, but also his skills are also not too bad either, because his new general skill is Wrath of the Wyvern, which can pretty much double his attack stat, which is going to make him do a decent amount of damage, well, at least in comparison to some of the other shadows. And the other really unique thing that Kaisel does actually have is his basic skill, Roar of the Heavens, which pretty much just increases your whole entire team's speed by 10%, which is never really anything too crazy. But in certain scenarios, like for example, when you're running in between the Baron walls, it maybe could be quite useful, but apart from that, it's not really anything too crazy, but at least it can help you clear stages faster where you have to move from one area to another, so I guess it has a good use for that. And then the rest of his skills just do damage, so there's not really much else to say apart from that. Which overall, I do think Kaisel is a very, very good shadow. However, I don't think he's quite top tier along the likes of Big Rock, Serbia, and also Igris, but I think I'm going to put him all the way up into the A tier. I do think he's pretty good. The ultimate damage buff is very, very nice, especially when ran with Isla. But overall, currently, I do still prefer the likes of Big Rock and also Igris for your authority leaders, which is why I'm going to keep him in the A tier. So he's kind of similar to the likes of Tusk, where he's the best in slot for one team, and that's about it, which does make him A tier, at least in my opinion. Beru is quite easily the most anticipated shadow to come to solo leveling Arise, and yeah, I think he's pretty damn good. However, some of you may be slightly disappointed with his Shadow Authority buff, which is pretty much just because it does increase your attack and crit damage by 3%, which can go all the way up to 5% once at max rank, which essentially makes him a hybrid of Blades and also Serbi the Cerberus as well. And overall, the Shadow Authority buff is okay. It's nothing too crazy. It's useful enough. But overall, in my opinion, I think all of Beru's value is going to come through his skills, which does mean, unfortunately, he's going to be taking the supportive role as a shadow and not going to be like a crazy DPS. And the reason for this is going to be because of his basic skills, because one of his basic skills called I Shall Devour You is really, really good, because what it allows you to do is just allows you to apply the punishment debuff, which is just Min Byung-gu's debuff that he does apply, which can pretty much increase the damage that your enemies will take by 5% and will last for 20 seconds. So unfortunately, it's not anywhere near as good as the combustion debuff that Serbi does apply. However, it's still something, and it's going to give you another extra 5% amount of damage, which is going to be very, very valuable, especially when you do run Beru as a supportive shadow, especially alongside your Sung Jin Woo, because then you can have up to a lot more debuffs than you normally could do. So overall, Beru is going to be supporting your damage by quite a bit. And then the only really sort of other notable thing that Beru does is his very first basic skill, which is My King. And this is actually really, really good for especially late at sort of endgame content if you do need some extra healing, because when the user uses this skill, it activates the Gluttony recovery effect on the entire team, which just allows you to restore 10% of your HP instantly, which is going to be pretty good for things like Baron Workshop of Brilliant Light, because if you do need a bit of healing, then Beru can definitely supply that to you, which overall, again, does give him another pretty good use. So yeah, overall, when it does come to Beru and sort of his usability, he plays a very similar role to Serbi, but can also play a similar role to Igris and also Big Rock, which overall, in my opinion, does give him a lot of versatility and can be used in many different ways, which overall for me, I do think is going to put him into the S tier. Overall, I kind of wish just Shadows in general did do a lot more damage, and especially Beru, because, I mean, Beru is like the most exciting Shadow in the game. But oh well, it's not too bad, because Beru as a supportive Shadow is still very, very good, and when run alongside Serbi and then either Igris or Big Rock, you're going to be able to get way more damage as to what you normally could do if you were just to use a different Shadow. And then finally, I do want to touch up on all of the other Shadows as well, because now that we have the general ranking for literally every single Shadow, it does mean they have received a bunch of new skills. But then also their Shadow Authority leader buffs have been buffed as well, because Iron's max HP increase now goes up to 12%. Igris's all team members critical hit rate increase has now gone up to 8% as well, which is going to be really, really good for endgame content and helping you crit a lot more. Serbi's crit damage increase has gone up to 8%, which overall still isn't very good, but it's something at least. Tank's defense increase going up to 12% is really, really good for the likes of Thomas Andre, because then obviously, like I said before, you can give him a lot more damage as well as even bigger shielding, and this can also apply to your Gogen He, and also other defense DPSs like Charlotte as well. Big Rock's buff to his basic skill damage increase goes up to 12% now, which is going to be really, really good for the likes of your Char Haynes, your Thomas Andres, your Armin Miamiris, and even Jinwoo, who's going to benefit from it a ton as well. Blade's attack increase has also gone up to 7% as well, which will be pretty good for Battlefield of Time. And then for teams like Alicia's team, Tusk's buff of core attack damage being increased to 40% as well is also going to give your Alicia a bit more damage. And then, like I said before, with Kaisel giving a 9% increase in ultimate skill damage. And then, of course, Beru giving a 5% increase to your attack and crit damage. And then for all of your Shadow's new skills, there's not really anything too crazy, because Iron's new skill only really does extra damage. Igris has received the Commander's Touch, which allows him to bleed even more. Serbi's new skill just allows him to apply combustion again, which is pretty good, because some enemies do have the ability to remove debuffs from themselves. So the more Serbi can apply combustion, the better, which is really nice. Tank's new skill is literally just pure damage, and that is it. The same also going for Big Rock with his Mana Discharge skill only doing damage. Blade's new skill called Silent Slash is actually pretty interesting, because it does allow Blades to increase his crit rate by 50% as well. Tusk's new skill, Claws of the Rampaging Fire Dragon, just only does damage. And then, of course, I've already spoken about Kaisel's skill, Wrath of the Wyvern, doubling his attack stat. And then finally, Beru's final basic skill is just Make Way for his Highness, which is just more damage as well. So there you have it. That is my complete tier list of all of the best Shadows currently in solo leveling Arise. And overall, if you did enjoy this video or you just found it useful in general, then don't forget to like and subscribe and click the link down below to support me as a creator. And of course, as always, I will see you all in the next video. Peace!